everyone. My name is Lucy Clark, and I am currently in the Southwest Deserts and Rivers Milestone class. And today I'm here to talk about how the West sentenced the Colorado River to death over a century ago. So this is the law of the river and why it failed. So, to understand the Colorado River, we have to first look at the Colorado River Basin, which was outlined in the Colorado River Compact in 1922. So the Colorado River Basin is split into two parts. So here we can see the upper and lower basin. In the upper basin, we have Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. And in the lower basin, we have Arizona, Nevada, and California. So overall, this western part of the United States gets water from the Colorado River, and that includes 36 million people who are drinking water from the Colorado River and over 6 million acres of farmland that are irrigated with Colorado River water. In the Colorado River Compact, it outlines allotments for all the states and the basins in the Colorado River, mainly just the basins. The states kind of work it out within the upper and lower basin. And so in 1922, when they were splitting up the river, they had to make a guess at how much water we get in the river each year, which was a little difficult. They didn't have great technology back then, but they went with a guess of 17 million acre-feet of water per year. This was a very unfortunate guess for us because that was one of the wettest years in terms of precipitation since the 1400s. So we have not seen that flow since 1922, and there probably wasn't even that flow in 1922, if we're being realistic. However, this is what they went with. So we have the upper and lower basin each getting 7.5 million acres of water a year in allotments. And about 30 years later, they added Mexico to that list as well. Since the Colorado River did used to reach to Mexico, it doesn't anymore, unfortunately, due to overuse. So they are supposed to be getting 1.5 million acre-feet a year. And you'll notice that indigenous peoples and the environment are not included in this list of allotments. Some states do provide for them now, but the original creators of the Colorado Compact did not include them. And one important thing to note about our dynamic between the lower and upper basins is that the upper basin typically uses around 70% of its allotment every year, but the lower basin uses 100% or more every year. And this is typically because if the upper basin doesn't send enough downstream, they will most likely get in legal trouble with the lower basin, but the lower basin does not have anyone to hold them accountable. So what were the consequences of these original outlines for the Colorado River Basin? First, within the basins themselves, most water rights fall under prior appropriation doctrine, which basically means first come, first serve. If you're the first person to find water and put it to beneficial use, you get to use that amount of water for the rest of time until your water right transfers, which you basically decide. And this makes water rights a very protective thing, and people feel very entitled to a certain amount of water that simply isn't in the river anymore. So we're really not dealing with our overuse issues. In addition, in 1922, the creators of the compact and just people who were using the river water in general had an idea of water conservation that's very different from how we view it today. So their basic ideal was water left in the river is water wasted. If water was not being put to use to make profit or monetary gain, it was a waste. So people were using it to the fullest extent of what they could, however much they could access, and to an extent we still do that today. Even though we sometimes think of new technology as being like water conservative, that typically means that we use less water for something, and then the water that we saved goes directly into something else. So if we're recycling laundry water from housing developments and doing more like drought-friendly landscaping, typically any water that would be saved from that is reinvested into new housing developments. So we still haven't learned what it means to actually save water. And then that last point down there is showing that we are still governed by this idea of paper water that was outlined in the Colorado River Compact, which is that 17 million acre-foot allotment that they guessed for us is still in place today. Even though we know that they were wrong then, we know it's still wrong now, but people still feel entitled to a certain amount of water that simply isn't there. So they're fighting over something that doesn't exist and avoiding the issue, which is going to be really unfortunate in the near future, bringing us to this year. So as you may know, and maybe collected based on all this, we are in a mega drought, and every part of the Colorado River watershed is in a drought as well. This is mainly the result of human-driven atmospheric warming, but historically there's also precipitation decline and precipitation increase naturally. But we are exacerbating the dry parts or the low precipitation parts, and we're kind of making the wet parts not count that much. So this year, you might have heard that our winter snowpack peaked a month early. So that means our snow, the little that we did get, has already started melting, and we are likely to only see around 30% of our annual average runoff. So there will not be enough water in the river to go around this summer, and we will most likely see some restrictions put on our water if we haven't already, which in Denver they have already. I don't know about here since I don't have a permanent residence here, but it will be coming. A few indicators we can look at and continue to look at over the summer are our two biggest reservoirs in the Colorado River, and these are Lake Mead and Lake Powell. So I put some stats up here that are kind of important in terms of whether or not our reservoirs are doing what they're supposed to do. So at Lake Powell and Lake Mead, we have hydroelectric power plants that provide electricity for the surrounding homes. So millions of homes get electricity from these reservoirs. And so as we can see here at Lake Powell, we have about 3,500 plus 20-ish feet right now. It will only continue to decline during the summer, and they're expecting it might hit this operational minimum, which is where they would have to shut down the electric power plant there, because there simply isn't enough water running through to keep the equipment working correctly. And then just another thing you might notice, dead pool here is that level at which we can no longer access any water in the reservoirs. So you can see we're getting scarily close. So people need to start educating themselves, which I tried to add a little inspiration at the end because this is a little depressing, but the Colorado River Research Group points out that because we cause it, we can halt it. So I encourage everyone to stay educated, keep an eye on how things go this summer, and tell people about it as well, especially if they live in the West. So, thank you.